the bench to the bleachers, you are listening to the only podcast in Ontario that keeps you in the game.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's do this.
This episode of In the Game is coming to you from Western Survivor Beef Jerky. That's right, Western Survivor Beef Jerky. Get your jerky on at www.westernsurvivor.ca. My next guest on In the Game is from Alberta, Canada. He was drafted by the Boston Red Sox and also spent time in the LA Dodgers organization. He played for the Canadian national baseball team in Lima. It is Jordan Procyshen. Welcome to In the Game. So I guess my first question for you is, when did it all start for you with baseball? Was it always baseball, or was it hockey or skateboarding or snowboarding as a kid?
Pretty typical Canadian kid growing up. Hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer. Growing up until I was about 14 is when I made the transition to strictly baseball. I was a late bloomer. I was still 5'0" going into grade 9. So I kind of made that decision that, I had passion for both sports, but I was a little more passionate about baseball, and that's what led me to just stick with baseball for year round.
So being from Canada and the age that you indicated you got into baseball, was there Canadian influences with the game of baseball, like a Larry Walker, or was there somebody that you looked up to that made you want to pursue baseball, or were you just happy with the game of baseball and had influences that were not Canadian?
I was just happy with the game of baseball. I looked up to my uncle, Todd Halushko, and he had the same thing as a kid. He was hockey and baseball. He ended up going the hockey route. But I just loved the game, loved the sport, and that's what kind of drew me into baseball more than hockey.
International play then has been familiar with your family then, having your uncle, because he was in the Olympics for hockey, right?
Yes, he was back in '94 in Lillehammer.
Okay, so it's pretty unique that, a family in two sports has international representation at a high level, which is pretty rare and unique. So that's a cool accomplishment for the family.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun experience.
So what was your fondest memories growing up as a child with baseball? Who were your influences, and what do you remember as you started to progress as a young ball player?
For me, it was something fun to do with my friends. It was always when we were done school or on the weekends, we'd go out to the park, either in Fish Creek or Bow Bottom there in Calgary, and it was just something to do outside. I was always making sure I was outside as a kid, and as for influences, I remember I think I was 12 or 13 years old, and we were in provincials, and we went down to Lethbridge, and we were watching the WNBL game between the Dogs and the Bulls. And at that point, I thought they were professionals. Watching them and the crowd that they had there, just certain things like that made me realize that, I wanted to be on this field playing in front of these types of crowds and bigger. So it's just a combination of having a fun time with all my friends, being outside, and as well, seeing what those players are doing at that time as a collegiate level. I didn't know that. But just seeing that in front of that type of crowd, it made me want to play even more.
When did you start to get the interest of college scouts and were you expecting that interest? Did you know when they started coming around that, maybe I am good enough to pursue it at the next level?
Would have been my junior year. So going into grade 11, I wasn't anything outstanding. But I had a pretty good knowledge for the game. I had pretty good fundamentals as a catcher. My bat was there. But again, obviously always learning and progressing. But my junior year is when I started to first get some contacts from colleges, and then as well talking to some pro scouts.
So that's cool. So can you walk us through what it was like when I guess accepted going to school when you took the offer in? What's that day like? I know you said that you knew there was interest and you knew this, but I mean, until you make a commitment, then it becomes real. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's two specific days that come to mind. It was when I actually went on my visit down to Northeastern Junior College there in Sterling, Colorado. And my first day there, the campus is on one side of town and everything else, the Walmart and all of the restaurants are on the other side of town. And I hadn't seen that other side of town yet, and I just saw the campus. So I knew I was in a small town. So I had to laugh when I spoke with Coach Shepard about, well, is there a Walmart here? Is there anything more? And he told me about it. But that was when I received my offer. And then, the day when I called Coach Shep, it was a surreal feeling knowing that everything that I've worked for in high school is finally leading up to this moment of, now I'm getting my college paid for and I'm ready for that next step.
So what was the transition like from, obviously being, and I mean, you're still an amateur ball player when you're playing college, but going from, the minor ball or the high school age transitioning into college, how was that as far as, because I'm guessing, even I was a catcher when I grew up in fastball and hardball. And, I like to think that I understood what framing pitches was back then, because I used to do it not knowing it was a thing now, because it was like I was trying to get that strike call or calling the games. Like, was there you probably weren't calling games because most catchers don't get to that until collegiate or the pro level. So how was the adjustment from, not so serious to a little bit more serious for you?
So with the Okotoks State Academy, I did get to call my own games going into my sophomore season on. That was something that they preached, is they want you to be able to know how to call your own game, because that just goes along with baseball IQ. And then as well, another reason why I was so fortunate is because I got to play for the collegiate summer league team there for the college team with the Dogs. So I already got a bunch of college experience. So going into college, yeah, I mean, you're around older guys, but I was there with them already in the sense of during the summer. So that transition was pretty smooth going into college. Going in there my freshman fall, I got to play a whole bunch of games. I was battling for the starting position with another freshman catcher. And so for a transition period, I got to call my own games in high school, which allowed me to call my own games in college, which I was very thankful for.
Yeah, it would be interesting stepping in and starting to call your own games through college. And some people don't realize in that position, like, pitcher's important, but the catcher is the only defensive player facing the rest of the team. They're doing the pass balls, but they're calling everything. And unless you're really into the game, because like I said, as far as the way that the minor league systems and all that stuff work, I'm an amateur at that, figuring I'm going to talk to you about that in a bit. But for someone else who's just watching the game, sometimes they don't really realize just how important the catcher is. Calling the game is science. I want to talk. You know where this is going, right? Do you consider yourself a purist with the game? And what I mean by that is, they get into the thing about major leagues where they should have a DH in one league and not, or just have the pitchers hit, or stealing signs. Are you okay with stealing signs? It's been around for a long time, right? I don't mean flashing things, blowing whistles.
Yeah.
But back then, like a scratch of the head or somebody was relaying signs for the past 50, 60 years. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, everybody's trying to gain some type of an advantage. As for all the stuff that's going on, I don't have a comment on that. Just because, I mean, they're taking care of it, and that's none of my business.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you can try and get some type of advantage, yes, but make sure as long as you're doing it the right way. Which, like, people have their own reason for what's good, what's bad. And like I said before, I'm not going to comment on that just because of how much it is being brought to everybody's attention at this moment. And again, that's not my business. But when it comes to pitchers hitting or not hitting, this past year when I was in AA, I got to see pitchers hit for the first time in professional baseball. It was a blast.
So you liked it, yeah?
I do,
Yeah.
and I know some pitchers like it, some don't. It just brings a whole other aspect into the game for a managerial standpoint, and the game really can turn into a game of chess as to what is a manager going to do if their pitcher's coming up soon, who do they have on the bench. So I like it from that standpoint, but I also understand everybody else's reasoning for wanting universal DH.
Is that you or me?
That's me. So
Okay, that's okay. I didn't want to be the rude host, right? And you're not a rude guest. I was like, oh man, I thought I had it switched off. So okay, so yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought on the pitching and hitting aspect of it. I'll step back once with the sign stealing thing. See, I look at that as baseball IQ. I mean, you might disagree. I look at it as if someone's able to read and digest something quickly and say, this is what's, even the third base coach or what, but it's also on the other team to be able to catch on saying, hey, we got to switch this up because they know, right? I mean, that's how I look at it, right? It's just like a quarterback coming to the line and they're hollering their play calls. If someone, someone's the snap count and all that, they're figuring it out. It's part of IQ, right? I mean,
I agree, and that's just something you can pick up with no technology.
Yeah, cool. So, player safety, rule changes recently. Breaking up double plays, that type of thing. Are you you okay and happy and satisfied with those type of rule changes they made?
I'm on the fence about them. Number one is you want to make sure that players are going to stay healthy and they can have a long career. I mean, prime example is Dustin Pedroia has never been the same after that slide by Machado. Whether that is the exact reason why or not, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But for me, I've always been an advocate of play the game hard. Play the game hard and play the game the right way. People are going to get hurt. I mean, you're just running or sliding, make a bad dive. Like, something's going to happen. You are going to get hurt. It's the nature of the game. As long as there's no malicious intent, then, as a catcher, if there's a play at the plate, I'm expecting to get run over. I have before, and I know the rules have changed. They actually are still allowed technically to run us over. But it's just a matter of playing the game hard and with the right intent, so there's no malicious.
You're an old school ball player, and that's the response. That's the response I like. And I talked to another former Major League Baseball catcher on one of my earlier episodes as well, and he indicated, I mean, you don't have to agree, you don't have to give me a response, but his comment more or less was, we make the rule changes to cater to our superstars or to our certain players. He was commenting on a Buster Posey play at home that a rule got changed because it was him. If it had been me behind the plate, that no one would have gave two craps, right? And I again, you don't have to respond to that, but that was just his view as a journeyman Major League Baseball player, and I would call a grinder and a grunt, right? But he played the game typical old school. I think a lot of fans appreciate that. No one goes out to intentionally hurt somebody. That. I know that. But at the same time, when injuries do happen, let's call it like a Buster Posey or whatever on a play at home, or even something that might be less obvious and not intentional, it affects pennant races, playoff races when a guy is out, right? So for you not to be able to, I can't break up a double play, well, that's the difference between getting a guy on, scoring a run, and winning and being in the playoffs, correct?
It does, it's certain things like that. And then the other aspect of that is the business side is that messes with people's money. If a guy misses so much time for an injury and then all of a sudden they can come back like, well, you got injured. We don't know how that's going to hold up, so we're not going to give you that extra dollar, extra zero on the end of the paycheck. So.
Yeah, so I totally am. I'm sensing the way you talk. You're a blue collar ball player, and I like you because I'm reading your story and I learned about you. Let's go back and talk about your draft, like you're being drafted into the show. What was like that for you? Like, what was it like for you? And you remember that day?
I remember it vividly. I was golfing with my brother, his buddy, and one of my buddies. because the year before I was expecting to get drafted and I watched it, and that was the worst thing I could have done. And so in 2014, I was like, nope, I'm not paying attention to it whatsoever. I'm going golfing, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then I got a baseball game that night to play.
Yeah.
So I was golfing. I was on the, I think, 6th or 7th hole, and I was getting ready to tee up, and all of a sudden I see my brother running across the fairway, just screaming at me that I'm going to be a Boston Red Sox. And it was a surreal feeling. And I don't remember the rest of the round of golf. We had 2 or 3 more holes. We were only playing 9 holes that day. And I was getting phone call after phone call, and it was a dream come true. It took me back to that feeling of accepting my college scholarship, plus probably times that by about 1,000. Of, as a little kid, that's exactly what I wanted, and I've achieved step 1 of that goal.
Yeah, step 1. And in the business that I'm in with hockey players, I always talk about them having their step 1 is the, major junior, being drafted in the major junior or going NCAA Division 1. There's your first step, right? And it's got to be harder for a Canadian ball player, like, you look at hockey and you look at how many players in Canada were coming out of here. There is a lot, and it is a small percentage that make the NHL. But I would have to say, because of the demographic of USA and the amount of players playing in USA, it's even a lot tougher unless you're like a northern kind of boy like Mike Trout was baseball, a Canadian. Like, the chances and the odds of somebody thinking you're going to succeed or be successful are kind of against you. Would you not agree?
They definitely are. I mean, if you even look at the percentages, only 1% of any baseball player ever makes the major leagues.
Yeah. And being Canadian, it's not like you're coming from California or Texas or Missouri or where they ball players come from. So I could see that, a little bit of a stigma being Canadian. But on the other hand, the way I viewed it with our pitchers up here, and again, if you're really in the ball, you understand it, is, a lot of Canadian pitchers or catchers who can pitch as well are being picked up by colleges and also, being drafted because they're not burning their arms out pitching 12 months of the year like some of these guys down south. I mean, I know they have indoor camps here and indoor facilities, but I know that mileage tends to be a lot more on American baseball players down in the south on their arms, right? And so I'm hearing that, kids that played hockey or lacrosse, but they were also a pitcher, tend to be like, hey, this kid's got a lot of miles left on his arm, which could be a unique factor for Canadians.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that scouts look for is mileage on an arm. That's a big thing. And then another thing that, both of my college coaches enjoyed is, most Canadians are hockey players and they bring that mentality to the field. So that's the other thing is, it doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees out or if it's freaking 20 degrees out and snowing. Like, we're staying where we're at, and it doesn't matter. We're ready to play.
So myself, I'm a Toronto Blue Jay fan first. Okay, I watched both World Series in the 90s. I was probably about 14, 15 years old. The Yankee jersey there, someone gave it to me, it was signed by Sheffield, right? The two players there for Blake and Emerson are local players that I knew growing up. But the Yankees one is just hanging. It's just there for cosmetics, or more or less. But my backup team has always been the Red Sox, should my Jays not make the playoffs, right? And for years, the Jays just didn't, because it wasn't it was a smaller market, even though it's a bigger city at that time in Major League. And, I got to see some Red Sox World Series now, which was cool. Yeah. When you got drafted, I'm assuming you got a hat and a jersey at some point or something was given to you. What was your reaction at that point? Now, like you said, step 1 is accomplished. But, I mean, are you kind of looking at it going, okay, now the work is ahead of me?
Yeah. I mean, I knew obviously that was my goal. I wanted to get drafted, but that was only step 1 because my ultimate goal is to make the major leagues. That's still my goal. So, I obviously enjoyed it that day. I enjoyed it for that week, understanding that I have achieved this part of my dream. And then it just sunk in that, all right, I got to get ready to go to work. Nothing has been given to me. I've earned everything in my career, and I know that's not going to change now that a team has selected me in the draft. So that was the mentality that I stuck with, that, nothing's going to be given to me. I have to continue to earn everything.
So all of a sudden you have you've been drafted. You would have went to spring training at some point with the Red Sox, correct?
The first season I just went straight to short season ball. Spring training hardly ended because I got drafted in June.
Okay, I was still going to ask. I haven't paid attention, but as a kid, when I went down to Florida to visit my grandparents in Lakeland, Florida, they used to take me to Winter Haven, which is where the Red Sox used to be for spring training. So, so jumping into that organization right away, what was the biggest difference for you, and what were the challenges that you right away you begin to face, and how did you figure them out and overcome those challenges?
It's definitely a culture shock. You go from college where you might have 2, maybe 3 different countries in one locker room, whereas in professional baseball, on one team we had people from 13 different countries. So there's a bit of a culture shock there, a language barrier that you have to overcome, and then in college, sometimes you get a little bit of a break on the Sunday starter or the Wednesday starter, whereas in pro ball, that's everybody's guy. Like, you will face some guys that aren't throwing as hard. They're maybe 88 to 90, but their stuff's moving. And then everybody else is 94, 96. So it's one of those things where there's no breaks when it comes to pitchers. You're getting everybody's best because everybody is professional. And then on top of that, it's changing your routine from, all right, Monday to Friday, I got school somewhere in there. I'm going to have a couple practices. I'll have a game on Wednesday and then games on the weekend. Whereas now we play 13 out of 14 games, 13 out of 14 days straight. And on that off day, you're traveling 8 or 9 hours. So it's just a matter of being able to manage your body a little bit differently and understanding, the tax that it does take on your body.
Yeah, how are those road trips in the minors?
It depends on what team and what league you're in. Certain leagues, the travel's pretty easy. I spent last year split between the Texas League and the California League, and California League travel is a breeze. When I was in the Eastern League up in AA with the Sox, our average road trip was about 6 hours. And we had 2 that were under 6, and I think the rest the furthest we had was 15 or 16. And you're on those coach buses. We didn't get any of those sleeper buses. We had 2, thankfully. They took care of us, but you don't fly until you get to AAA, and they're long bus trips. You get in at 6, 7 in the morning. You're expected to play that night.
So I'm going to ask you guys had movies on those buses?
We did. We had movies, we had video games, and we had cards.
Okay, so I'll throw the one movie in because you're Canadian. Yep. But I'm going to say, so the movies involved, you would have the Canadian one would be Slapshot, which I'm guessing probably didn't get seen on there. So are we talking Major League, Bull Durham, and For the Love of the Game?
See, we don't stick to many baseball movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It kind of because we're living and breathing baseball 24/7, and so the difference between pro ball, high school, and college is the fact that in pro ball, an off day is an off day. You get away from the baseball field. You do anything non-baseball related. My favorite thing to do, play golf. But whereas in high school or college, off days, you would find a way to get back into the field.
Yeah.
So you didn't need that mental break. So in pro ball, yeah, we would watch the odd baseball movie, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it was just other random movies. Depending on what our manager liked, what our team captain wanted to watch. So it was a big coin flip as to what we would watch.
So you watch the movie Moneyball, and you see one scene in there when Billy Bean or Brad Pitt sees Giambi dancing on the table and what have you, and kind of flips out about them losing. And do you have music in the locker room?
Yes.
What's the go-to? Is that you said you had 13 different countries, so I'm gonna guess rap, salsa, reggae. Like, is it a big pot of music there, or what is it?
It is. We would switch certain days. Pregame, it's mainly keep it in your headphones. Have headphones on type of deal, just because everybody gets ready for the game differently. Post game, we would have a few different win songs, and then we would just it would change up as to what type of music. When I was in AAA, Tuesdays was our Latin American history night, and so we wore special uniforms. So we had Latin dinner that night. So we played Latin music those nights. So we would switch it up all the time as to what's being played on the radio and on the boombox.
So you see Players Weekend in Major League Baseball with the names and everything, and you were talking about the Latin night. I mean, there's so many. Even in hockey, they do this. You a big fan of that? Is that interesting to see some of those non-traditional jerseys that I know down? Like again, I'm an amateur when it comes to the minor ball stuff, but down south, I remember some teams that were either New Mexico area, Texas area down there, or Arizona. They were close to that Boulder area, and they had like Mexican style skulls with the flowers in it, and they're like you know what I mean? Like they would really had dressed up uniforms, which was cool to see. Are you a fan of that?
I am. Some of the uniforms that we get for those special nights are not the best material. So when you're playing in 100-degree heat and it's very humid out, it's not the best to wear, but we all know it's going for a good cause.
So it's the same as the hockey jersey. So they're I get what you're saying. It's basically the one and done jerseys. They did it where they're not spending a ton of money, but they're able to auction them off after, and get not very breathable. Yeah,
not very breathable, but we all understand what the reason is for them. And again, there's a lot of auction off the back of our backs for the jerseys that night. Whereas after the game, we'll go and we'll sign them, give them to them right there on the field. I'm a fan of them. I like them. Some of them have been ridiculous that I've seen some pictures of. They're there for a good cause, so they're good.
So speaking of out of routine with these jerseys from not being normal, what is your pregame or like the night before, the day of, like on a game? You got rituals or you have a routine?
I also do my best to make sure that specific routine can change regarding as if we're on the road, if it's a late game, a day game, or like if normally I have like a 5-hour window, 7-hour window before the game starts that I'm even at the field. So for a typical home game, I'll get there around 12:30ish. I'll get a workout in. I'll go and hit in the cage for a little bit. Then we'll go practice on the field. If I'm playing that day, then I go hit BP. I go in the cage. I go in the locker room and I start prepping. If I'm not playing, then I'm catching pitchers before the game, before BP, and then I hit last on the field for batting practice, and then I go under and get myself ready and just stay ready on the bench. As for the night before, I'll look at our starting pitcher who we have going on, just kind of what his stuff has been doing and kind of how I want to attack the opposing team as to specific hitters. And then I'll look at their starting pitcher for that day as well.
So how much of a difference as far as living conditions, travel conditions, I guess stadiums, fans, from single, double to AAA? How much of a difference is there?
It's a big difference. Certain organizations, certain levels, they have really nice facilities, such as Low A, Greenville Drive for the Red Sox. They have a facility that could probably be a AA facility. It's beautiful. They really take care of it. But for the majority, they're not like that at that level. So it's a big difference going up from Low A to High A, AA to AAA. There are some AA fields and AAA fields that could potentially be major league fields. Lehigh Valley, which is AAA for the Phillies, I was shocked by it. It was gorgeous, and same with Scranton, AAA for the Yankees. So it's a big difference stadium-wise, going from level to level. As well, you get more fans. Yeah. There's a specific requirement of the number of fans they have to be able to host to be a AA or a AAA facility. Travel-wise, you have a lot more guys at the lower levels. So, example, when I first signed and went to short season, their rosters are bigger. I think it's a 30-man roster that they're allowed compared to 25. So you have 30 to 35 guys on a bus compared to 25 guys on a bus in Low A up. And then you just get nicer buses when it gets to AA and AAA.
So I saw a park in I'm just about an hour from Buffalo.
Okay.
And man, I've driven by it. It's a beautiful ballpark. Sadly, with the virus going on right now, we were actually going to buy, a 6-pack of tickets or a 4-pack of tickets to go there because it's nestled kind of in that I don't know if you,
Yeah, I've been
yeah.
there.
So,
Yeah.
but it's when you drive by on the interstate and look in, it's beautiful. Like it looks like it would be an enjoying night at the park. And they had some good prospects in that system too. So, but sadly we're going to be waiting here till we figure out what's going on with everything, and same with the Blue Jays. But yeah, it really struck me as some of the ballparks I've seen can be really beautiful for the minors, right?
Yeah.
So you were with Boston in that organization, and you spent time in the LA organization.
Yeah.
And you were recently signed to Chicago in like February with their
Yeah.
organization, right?
Mhm.
What is the situation that's going on right now with the current pandemic with all the minors? From what I heard was, there's a whole whack of free agents, or the teams kind of shut their doors. What is everybody currently doing?
Well, I unfortunately got bad news back in May that the Cubs did part ways with me. No hard feelings. I understood that it was a business and an economic decision for them with everything going on. As for the minor league season, it's all up in the air right now. I talked to a couple of my old teammates with the Cubs yesterday about it, and they're still waiting to find out exactly what's going on, because the teams still don't know. I mean, everybody's seen in the press about what's going on with the MLB union and the MLB owners, and nothing at the moment is getting done. So there's no way that anything in the minor league side can really start forth until they figure out the big league side. So yeah, right now it's a waiting game, which is never fun, but it's a part of it. We all know that, and just doing our best to stay ready.
Yeah, and I mean something has to happen. Meaning, you're going to have a major league season. You've got to have a minor league, because with injuries and also, I mean, you have to have guys to bring up. I mean, you can shut the doors and say you're going to do that, but the reality is guys are going to end up somewhere, and they're going to become property of an organization to be able to have the pipeline going up and down. It's just a matter of where, what, when, and how, right? So while we're doing this, what are you doing to stay in shape during this time?
I'm fortunate. There's a pretty good facility here, not too far from me, and so I'm going there. I'm hitting. I'm doing some catching work and throwing as much as I can, getting my daily workouts in. So I'm just treating this as another off season at the moment. Obviously my workouts are a little bit different now than they would be in the off season, but I'm treating it like another off season. I'm just waiting for a call that I can go and try out for a team and hopefully get re-signed.
So you're kind of waiting this out. Hopefully it'll lead to a direction where you're signing with a club. And I honestly think, like I said, you've been right there on the cusp of everything when it comes to the majors, right? Like you're right there. And obviously I always see sometimes catchers, unless you're a blue chip prospect and you're known and you're pegged to be, a high round pick, it's like goaltenders in hockey. It takes so long to develop, because the catchers are, like you said, they're calling the games, they're working on everything, and then once you're known for your defensive side and calling the game, you're an asset to an organization, right? So it's just a matter of when a person says he's the right fit for us and we need to have him at the higher part of our organization, or I guess it's, 30 and 50 or 60 man roster up there. So I think it's just a matter of time, obviously, for you to grab on somewhere else. In the meantime, though, you're obviously got aspirations for Team Canada to hang into that system and represent our country more, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to represent our country again. It was an unbelievable experience to represent our country in Lima last year in 2019. And I was fortunate enough in high school as well to represent the junior national team. So it's definitely something that I do with pride, to be able to wear Canada across my chest. But I mean, the ultimate goal is to get to the big leagues, and to be able to do that, I need to get back with an organization, and that's my number one goal.
So, who are probably three of the toughest players that you've ever played against? And I guess that's probably at the plate, right? Because I mean that's going to be your big bulk of the time being behind the plate. Who are the three toughest that you have faced?
The three toughest. That's a tough one for me to pick. Because everybody brings something a little bit different to the plate. Oh man, you really put me on the spot here. I've played against a lot of good players, especially coming up with the Sox. It was ridiculous.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question.
Okay.
Was you had so who are the three that were the most toughest players to play against, and possibly who are the three best players you've ever seen, and who are probably three of the best players you played with?
Oh boy. One of the toughest guys for me when I was playing in high A back in 2015, he was with the Indians at the time. I was playing against Clint Frazier before he got traded to the Yankees, and he has some of the quickest hands in the game and the quickest bat speed that I have seen myself. We always would attack him different ways, and he always seemed to know what was coming. And so he's the type of guy that it's fun to face him because of how tough he is to get out. It's just like I said before, it's like a game of chess of understanding. All right, I make this move. What's your move going to be? So he's definitely up there. Oh man, hitting wise, for another Canadian is Nick Pivetta. I got to see him when I was back in high school and junior college, getting pro ball. Facing him, I know he's been in the big leagues now for I think 5 years, and he's not very fun to face. Third guy, oh man, sheesh, just trying to think right now. Not really in that baseball mind in the sense of guys I've played against. Last year there was a catcher for the Padres, and I can't think of his name at the top on the tip of my tongue right now. He was in high A last year for the Storm, and he was a miserable guy to get out. He looked like he had the longest swing and seemed like you could get in on him with some velo, and next thing you know, you put 98 on the inner half on him, and he's still getting barrel and hitting out of the park. So he was a well-rounded hitter. I think he hit 330 last year with 25, 30 home runs, which is impressive for a catcher. So those are probably three guys that I can think of at the moment. I know there's a lot more.
Yeah.
As for guys I've played with, the list goes on and on. I mean, you just look at the roster in 2016 for my team. I think there's 14 big leaguers from that one roster. We had Andrew Benintendi, we had Rafael Devers, we had Michael Kopech, we had Mauricio Dubon, we had Yohan Moncada. It's Jalen Beeks, who's a pitcher with the Rays now. It was an impressive staff that we had pitching wise and as well hitting wise. Like it wasn't fun for other teams to face us.
So we always hear about the perfect game or a no-hitter. I mean, obviously those are probably, anybody does it, even in college or, through the minors or into the pros. How many of you caught perfect games or no-hitters?
I caught 2 in high school, and I have been 1 out away once. I've been 1 strike away once in pro ball, and I've been 1 inning away once in pro ball. So I'll never forget the 2 times in pro ball. It was the 8th inning. We were playing Richmond, AA for the Giants, and his first batter of the 8th inning, and he just snuck one by our shortstop. And then the other one was a 3-2 count, bottom of the 9th inning, and called for a slider, shook off, wanted to throw the fastball, said, all right, double down the line. And that would have been a no-hitter there. So that's the closest I've come in professional baseball.
That's crazy that you can remember like how many in high school or college or pro ball. Like that's how rare they are. Or how and I know there's some pitchers or catchers in the pros that have had multiple, right? Or
Yeah.
like meaning more no hitters probably than perfect games.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but for you to remember that out of all the games that you play, that's just how rare it is, right?
Yeah.
So baseball, I mean, you have different characters, you have different variety of people, you have different skin colors, you have her heritage, right? So that is many different types of people playing the same game, being, I guess, raised differently with that game or taught that game, but they probably all or most like to talk, or I guess you have some trash talkers, right? Have you had some trash talkers? I mean, it doesn't matter whether, like you said, they come from Japan or they come from South America or wherever. There's always that one or two guy who is flavorful or colorful on the field, right? Do you know? Have you had a few of those?
Yeah, you always got your guys that are smack talkers. I mean, that's a universal thing in baseball. They say baseball is a universal language with everything, and it truly is. It's just like in any sport. There's going to be some trash talkers. You're going to have your quiet guys. You're going to have your guys that are just your leaders. You're going to have your guys that are clowns and all different aspects. So, yeah, we definitely we do have our smack talkers, and it's part of it.
What are some of the weirdest things you've seen behind the plate? Like I know when I was a kid growing up, I'd see Nomar Garcia Parra tugging at his batting gloves. So, there were certain people that had they tapped around the batting, the plate or the batter's box a certain way with the bat. There was just certain people that did certain movements before the pitch came. Have you seen any of those?
Everybody has their own routine. That's basically what it is. That's their pre-pitch routine. And some are a lot more extravagant than others. I have some guys that will completely get rid of the chalk line the closest to the plate. I have some guys that'll just stand in there straight up and down, and they're ready to go. They don't do anything. I'm like, are you sure you're ready? I got guys that'll draw all sorts of different lines in the box. Some will tap me on the shin guard, tap me on the mask. It's different. Probably the worst are the type of guys that will get in there, put their hand up to the umpire, and dig a hole about 5 feet down in the back of the box. And I'm just thinking, well, I'm glad you're a righty, not a lefty, because I'd be really upset if I was getting in the box like this. And then all of a sudden they'll dig it out for 20 minutes, and then they'll back out of the box, get back in, and they won't even stand in that spot. So there's a lot of different things. But as for weird, everything in baseball is a little bit weird to me.
So you brought up righty and lefty. Are you set on those matchups with, how when management styles, or do you just believe if the pitcher is that good or a hitter is that good, it's not going to matter? Like if a hitter is that good, it doesn't matter if you throw a right-handy or a left-hander against them, the guy's going to hit it. What do you view on that?
I'm a firm believer if a hitter is that good, it's not going to matter. Obviously, you want to try and make them a really good hitter. Your goal then is to make them as uncomfortable as possible. And if their numbers are slightly less better against lefties, and that makes them a little less comfortable, then you're going to go with that.
So could you approach it that way with, numbers versus a lefty or a righty, or just a fastball high and inside to back them off to make them, because you said uncomfortable?
Yeah. If a guy is too comfortable, I'm not afraid to throw one up and in just to dust it off. There's no malicious intent to it. If they're on our plate and they're really dug into the box, we're not going to let them stay comfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing my pitcher any justice then if I'm allowing that. As for lefties, righties, numbers, to me, it's how are we going to get him out? Do I have a feeling that, or the manager have a feeling that your stuff is going to play well against this hitter? So that's just the matchup part. It's not really lefty, righty. It's more stuff-wise.
Yeah, now that you're saying that, I think about it where you always hear that, this batter is like 1 for 28 against this guy.
Exactly.
Whether it's a righty or a lefty, you could be, they could all be righties, but it's like at this point in the game when you're needing that guy out, this guy here for some reason over 7 seasons has owned this guy.
Yeah.
And you're taking your matchups there, right?
100%.
Yeah. So every team's got a character, not as a player. So what I'm saying is there's always that trainer, there's always the equipment guy, there's always that bench coach, or you ever have one of those guys that stand out to your mind?
Yeah, I do. Elian Herrera last year when I was in high A with the Dodgers, he was that energy. He was that guy that he was our bench coach. He was our fourth coach and our third base guy, and he was awesome. Whatever you needed, he'd be there for you. If it was early work, if it was extra work, like whatever it was, he was that energy type of guy. And those are the guys that bring something different. So he's definitely someone who sticks out to my mind at this moment for sure. And he just continues to make sure that the game is fun for everybody, and he's making sure everybody's working hard.
So we talked about rule changes. We talked about, matchups. We talked about things like that. Is there one thing that you could add to the game to make it better? And is there one thing that you'd like to see the game do away with to improve it?
Personally, I think that we need to stop messing with the game. It's a pastime for a reason. People understand that games are long. There are some games that last 4 hours. And is that particularly fun? No, but if you understand what's going on, then yes, it is. It's like, I talked to my brother about, we'd rather watch a 10-9 home run derby game than a 2-0 perfect game. Whereas to me, yeah, both are fun to watch, but I understand the art of the 2-0 game, whereas some people might not. So I wouldn't change anything to the game. I would let it be what it's been. I think if you try and change something so much, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Like the rule change that I saw the one time where they're, with the pitch clock, right? Like between pitches, and you're talking about the 2-0 game or the 4-hour game. See, those games I enjoyed as a fan, because those type of games are games where they're long because you're pitching, you're carving out the plate, you're picking corners, you're strategically attacking batters. And it goes both ways for both clubs. And if it's drawn out like that, it's because there's a lot of higher pitch counts, or meaning full counts, and batters are either patient and they're waiting to pick their pitch. It's a tight game, or pitchers, like you said, are slowly carving away, and there's foul ball. But it's a good game to see. I would rather not see a 18-1, or every now and again the 10-10 game, if they're going yard all the time, it's okay. But like I said, that 4-hour game where it's a chess match, and you're like, okay. And then usually those chess match games, it's usually 8th, 9th inning where it happens, or an extra inning. And that's the excitement of it, right?
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I'd probably change is the minor leagues, in the sense of, limiting the amount of extra innings, honestly. They've shown that, yes, you do want to win in the minor leagues, don't get me wrong. But if you can limit the amount of extra innings, make it like this year they did the runner on second base with nobody out in extra innings. And I like that because it did limit the amount of extra innings it went to. So that way it's not the 18th inning, freaking midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, you got a 9-hour bus ride after that. So just for like the travel purposes in that sense, and as well, then you have a lot of player movement, because now you're using all of your pitchers, and then you have to bring in more pitchers for the next day. But no, I like the game the way it is.
So watching the Toronto Blue Jays last season, like I said, I'm slowly kind of coming back, with baseball into my life. Things have really changed over probably 8 or 9 year period where I didn't really watch it because I was very busy with my own business. But I saw something. People thought I was crazy that I supposedly saw it. But with the Blue Jays, like they were platooning pitchers in games, meaning like they would have a guy come in who pitched the first 1 and a third innings and then bring their starter in for 4. And then, like, am I wrong?
You're not wrong. So actually, it was. I believe I'm correct on this. It was the Tampa Bay Rays who started that, and it's called the opener. So what it is, they'll bring in a reliever, and they want that reliever to get 6 outs, and they'll come in, and if they can get 6 outs in their pitch limit, then they'll get the first 2 innings, and then they bring their starter in. Because from what I've heard is that stats show starting pitchers struggle the most in the first inning. And so then another reason for it is now their 1, 2, 3, 4 hitters, they're not seeing the starting pitcher for their third time until the 8th or 9th inning. Because the more you see a guy, the better off the hitter is going to be.
Yeah, so I tried to explain that to, like, when I told a buddy of mine that, he's like, really? Like he was like, I didn't know. I'm like, no, really. They have a guy in there that faces, like, they want him to try to get through most of the order once, like, for 2 innings. And I said, then they throw their starter in for probably 4 or 5 innings. And I said, then they'll bring a setup and a closer. And I said, to me, the same thing you did. I'm like, it's probably in theory that if the guy burns through the order once, that's throwing heat or whatever nasty stuff, those guys are seeing that versus seeing a starter from 1 to 6 innings. And by the second or third time, they're already all over them. And I said it makes sense, but other people didn't notice that watching the Jays games. I'm like, no, really? What? They bring a guy in to start, and he's like, you mean the starter? I'm like, no, it's like platooning or something, right? So
yeah, they started doing that opener. We did a little bit in the minor leagues, and it can work really well or it can backfire on you.
Yeah, it can, right? Because I mean, even your dominant closers, like there's always a game where, like you said, he's going to get knocked around yard, right? And that guy in that role can't do that every single day, because if you're playing a 4-game, 3-game series, he's not going to be able to chuck an inning and a half, 2 innings every single day. So it's just not going to work, right? So like I'm an amateur getting back into ball again, right? But I'm understanding that because I know the game enough. But still, some fans who just love to watch ball that don't get into the analytics and understanding it and why they do it wouldn't pick up on that. And again, it's changed traditional way the game is played. I don't find it a bad thing, but like you said, messing around with some of the stuff, I thought the pitch clock, trying to speed that up, to me was
yeah, I'm not a fan of the pitch clock. I do like it between innings. I will say that. I like that they have a limit for between innings, because there's some guys where they're the last out and they'll walk all the way back to the dugout, take their sweet time, and then walk all the way back to their position. So I don't mind it for between innings. I say that, whereas if I'm the last out and I got to go put all my gear on, then it's a struggle. But for in between pitches, I'm not a fan of it.
Okay, so I got a couple more questions before I let you go, because it's almost been an hour already into the conversation. So I guess my one thing before I forget the last one will be, at your stadiums, they said Price, he loved the popcorn in Toronto when he went to Toronto. Was there any ballpark food or any, you went to a certain area and you're like, oh man, like I'm glad we're stopping in here, like I gotta have this, right? Is there anything like that for you?
I mean, this past year going down to Texas was always nice. Get some In-N-Out burger. I remember when I first signed and I was up in the New York Penn League, a couple of the fields there actually had some really, really good chicken tenders. So those were good for post game. Otherwise, I mean, food-wise, nothing too big. When I was in Portland, Maine, it's a food town. Like, it is an absolute, if you're a foodie, that's the place to go. So, but that was my hometown when I was playing there. So I got really fortunate to have that.
Yeah, I just remember every time David Price, when he first came to Toronto, they had this, it was almost like a massive garbage bag of the popcorn going, we're waiting for you, it's here, because he made the tweet or whatever that he loved the popcorn there, right? But but my other question is, it might be more noticeable at the big leagues, at the top in the show. The stadiums, kind of like hockey, football, the game is really getting commercialized now. do you find some of the ballparks from, will you just say all minor pro to the major league level, are they losing some of their heritage, or are they losing some of that pastime feel and becoming too modern and too commercialized? Or is it the best of both worlds, like a Yankee Stadium, where they rebuilt something like a Fenway, right? They rebuilt old Yankee Stadium, added the porch. It kind of looked like the old stadium, kind of had the features, but it had the modern amenities. Or is a place like Fenway, you know, are they different? Like, meaning Fenway is Fenway, it's still there, versus a new modern Yankee Stadium with amenities. Are they commercializing it too much, or are they trying to keep the best of both worlds?
They're trying to keep the best of both worlds. I mean, you can never recreate a Fenway or a Wrigley Field. Like, it's not possible. I mean, you look at Dodger Stadium, and they did a whole bunch of upgrades to it this past offseason. So they're trying to get the best of both worlds. Those older teams are trying to keep the older style in their ballparks while still accommodating and making sure that the playing field and everything around is up to standards. In the minor leagues, it's pretty similar. They're trying to keep that older school pastime involved, but also be modern at the same time. There are some places where it's just brand new, and for some people, new is better, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's some places where they're just old and too old, and they do need to make some updates. So it's definitely a best of both worlds. There are some places that I think went too far new and didn't have anything of the past time, and there's some places that are too old that need to have some updates.
Perfect. So I'll head down the path of letting you go, but I guess just moving forward, is there any things that you are involved in as far as a player wise that whether it's baseball camps or academies, or I know some players are involved in helping young kids. Is there any of that type of stuff that you're doing currently during your in-season, off-season, I guess this would be called?
I'm working with a few younger kids at the moment. Nothing too much, because I want to make sure that the moment I get a phone call to say, hey, look, we got Trout on this date, that I'm still doing everything in my power to stay active and ready to be able to move on that day. So I'm doing my best to make sure I'm still working with kids, but also make sure I'm taking care of myself and being ready.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, it was a blast having you on. I want to wish you all the luck in the world. I want to see you get a contract with an organization and be back at it. I also want to see you wearing the Canadian Maple Leaf, man, and I will be watching. And like I said, I want to stay in touch with you down the road and connect with you, especially if we have some big things happening with your career. And it was a pleasure to have you on, my man.
I appreciate it.